Today we're going to be looking at the remix decks, and I'm nice to know that a lot of people have turned out for the remix decks. The remix decks were released 3 years ago and still haven't really taken off, I'm sure, the way people want. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity at BPM to show you some of the stuff that it can do, and I think it's quite cool. One thing you can do, which is quite simple, okay, is roll off the EQ. So for instance, if I do a loop for 8 bars over this, everyone will know this tune. So what I can do is I can roll off the bass, okay, and I can pick another kick drum, okay. So what we've done, rolled off the EQ off the main song, and we've put it on to the remix deck, okay, which actually sounds quite good. That's the original, that's the remix, okay? Doesn't sound too bad at all, okay? The problem with that is that the EQs do not take everything off. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to put something together for you guys and girls. So just to have a bit of fun, everything I've done, I've either taken from a sample deck, I've captured myself, recorded myself, and I've changed the genres up to see what you think, okay? Just to show you just snippets, and it's like a 5-minute demo. So I'm just going to play for you for 5 minutes. You'll see my hands not do much because I've programmed it. And I'll show you bits what I've done afterwards, okay? So, B, 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 what we're going to do is going to run through exactly what I did without extending it too long so we all walk out to go somewhere else, okay? So I pinched some samples from places. I made some samples. I recorded some samples, and I used some other bits from songs. And I wanted to show you that you can use it with songs over here, which was House Every Weekend, to something I've made, and then with the F1s. So, first of all, what are remix decks? They are essentially a deck that has 64 cells in, okay, that you can house any length of songs in each cell. So people use it as sample decks, yet you could put 64 songs in here, complete songs. So for instance, if you were out on a gig and you just decided you wanted to put 64 songs in, and you're just going to fade in and out, you can just press one. Then when that song goes, you can press the other, the other. That's the simple way of using it. Or you can cut things up, and if you're playing things, especially for instance stuff like minimal tech, tech house, anything like that, the world's your oyster for this. So we're going to run through the F1. On the top, we've got 4 filters, okay? And basically, everyone knows what a filter does. You've got your high pass and your low pass. You can change that in Traktor to different ones, to a ladder, to Z, to zone, okay? You've got your individual faders. So for instance, if I drag this down a section, if I'm playing, okay, I can take one out, yeah, and I can make mostly a whole song from that, okay? Then going down, you've got your sync, which for everyone who knows Traktor, obviously syncs, and then you've got your quantize. Now your quantize, what you need to do with that, you can choose, you can have a quarter of a note, as you can see there. You can have a half note, 1 note, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. So basically what that means is if you press it, it's going to wait that amount of beats before it comes in. So for instance, if you are doing lots of things at once, you could set it for 8, press them, and it will wait 8 beats before it comes in, okay? Similarly, if you've got it like that, you cannot then play around. So if I change my quantize to quarter, okay, if I wanted to go, you could do that on the quarter, but if you change it to a full note, etc., it just wouldn't do it, okay? So you've got your quantize. You've got your capture, but I'm going to come back to that because this is the bit this is how I made it all, okay? Then you've got your reverse, obviously reverses it. You've got your type. Now with your type, what you've got here, you see these are green and these are blue. And what you've got here, these are one shots. So a one shot is you press it once and it plays it once and doesn't repeat, okay? And then obviously you've got the opposite, which are your loops. So I could change, for instance, like I did earlier, B, okay? And if I change it to it repeats. Okay, you could change that to anything you want. Also, you've got your size, which means if you, for instance, put an 8-bar loop in, you can then change the size to 4 bars. Or you can 2 or 1, and you can basically use it as an essential loop. But you can also loop on this, which I'll show you later. And then you've got your browse. So obviously your browse, I don't suppose you can see at the bottom there, I can scroll through. If I hold shift, it goes around the trees, okay? But I'm going to keep on my remix there. So I could just hit that, choose my deck 1, which is there, click it, and it's already loading. I also have my decks that you cannot load into a play deck, okay? That's pretty essential, obviously. However, in remix decks, you either have to do that, or you have to have something like a D2 or an S2 to stop that. So, for instance, I now cannot load from my F1 a remix set into the remix there, because you can see that, and that is still playing. So you have to turn them off before you can load something, okay? I'm sure you can, of course you could map it, MIDI map it, but what I then do is use the D2, change my deck to C, and then you'll see it turned off, therefore I can load it. So just remember that you can't turn that off in the F1, okay? That is probably the only thing that they should add. Everything else, spot on. We've got our 16 pads down here. They are your first window down here. So that is your first window. However, what's really cool is you're 16 there, and if I scroll down, you've got 16, 16, 16. So you can potentially have 64 in each deck, but you can also be playing 4 tracks of each remix set, basically, which is really cool. And you can assign effects to each one as well. So you can scroll up and down like that, okay? So then, if you see along here, it says key lock, effects, monitor, and punch. So if I hold that down, my key lock is lit. So I've got all my key locks on, okay? I've also got effects on 1, which I'll come back to in a second. Then we've got our monitors, obviously for our in-ears, because if you notice, there's some grayed out things in here as well. And then you've got your punch. Now what punch does, if I'm setting a track, okay, and I press 1, it will then wait, and it will start at the beginning. Should have let you know before. It runs horizontally, so if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, they can all run together. If you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, it cannot. So it overrides as it goes down, okay? So for instance, if I've got this, okay, when I press, if you can see this, if I press, that starts at the beginning, okay? Now, if I then change it to punch mode, it will punch through, okay, wherever that song is. So, see? So it started wherever that one left off. Now, obviously, you can't see that too well because Sweet Harmony's 4 bars and bass is 2 bars and 4 bars. So that didn't show, but basically it starts where it's left off. Now, underneath each button as well, okay, you've got grayed areas as well. So you've got your master. Now, what this means is, for those of you who don't know, I've got sync on now. If I then play something, and I will now want to use this as the master BPM, I then hold shift, and you'll see, did you see that the master here lights up? Okay? Similarly, if I do this, okay, at the moment, the master is not lit up. Okay, if I hold shift and press sync, that then creates my master, which I really use a lot. Now, you can have your master up here, okay, and you can have it, that is your master, but because I wanted to speed it up, I then used one deck as my master. Then we've got your delete, so for instance, if I want to delete something, I can just hold that, and then I delete one of my pads, or if I choose a whole bank, or my UL, which means I'm going to delete the whole lot. Again, though, bear in mind, if you do delete the whole lot, it doesn't stop the play. You have to still stop the play, even though there's no cells there, okay? And then we've got our color, so we can change color. So we can change this one, and you see that comes up there, but it also comes up on here. So I can then just change that to a nice green, okay? And then let's now change it to green. So something that I do is, if I'm going out and about, I'll have my drums as one color, my vocals as another, similarly to stems as well, okay? But it's up to you, you can do whatever you want. And then we've got our pitch, which I showed you earlier, which again changes the pitch. But you have to have key lock on for that. The speed, which I'll come back to. And we can then turn it into MIDI mode, because this is essentially a MIDI controller. There's only one USB, there's no power going to it. So you can turn this into a MIDI controller for any other thing that you want to do. That's MIDI mappable. So if you use other software, you know, you can use that as well. Okay? So you've got your faders here. Now, for instance, welcome to, that is a lot quieter than I want it to be. Now, if you see down here, you've got your pitch and your gain. Obviously, when you change the pitch, you'll see that move up. Now, this gain, I could press that up. Welcome to, and it's louder. Similarly, I can double tap it, and it goes back to 0. But what I can do, because I don't want to be over my laptop while I'm DJing, I can actually change that using this. Now, as you can see, my fade is all the way down. That's all the way up, so it's not going to go any more. However, if I hold shift, let me move my mouse out of the way. See that gain going up? Can you see that? It's just here. So I'm holding shift and I'm just pulling the fader down, which makes it louder. Then that gives me more headroom, which means my fader's now here, which was the original 100%. Now if I push it up there, that's my new 100%. Similarly, if I bring it down, hold shift, I can then go back to 0 or wherever I want. So when you import your samples or tunes or whatever you want in there, you can manipulate that yourself on the fly, which means you don't have to lean over your laptop and look like you've got a backache. That is the main functions. Now, I use the F1s because they're written for Traktor, and I use Traktor. You can use other things, such as your D2s. You can MIDI map any other thing that you want. Okay, but even the D2s don't have the same functionality in them to control remix decks as the F1 does. So just bear that in mind. And also, the F1's reasonably priced. I think it's about £112 or £120 or something like that, which I think is pretty reasonable for a robust controller. Okay, not that I'm selling it, of course. I'm not on commission. I just use them. So let's talk about capturing. So you can capture into a cell from any song track, but not a stem track and not a remix track. So what I mean by that is I couldn't capture anything from this section here into this section. However, I can steal it from this section. Okay? So for instance, if I now put on a loop. Okay, so I've got now an 8-bar loop. I want it to be 4. Now what I can do, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. There's loads of different ways of doing it. So what you can do is that's looping right now, okay? I can click that now and drag it into an empty cell, okay? Press stop. Now that has come in here. And that is that quick. You can just take a loop from there. Now what you can do as well is you can capture it from the actual deck using this. So at the moment I've got CL. Okay, that means CL, which is the loop up here, the loop sample. I'm not going to go into that today, okay? But I can select from C to B. Can you see that flashing? And it will say CB there, okay? So now I can control, now I'm using the knob on the F1 for deck D, and I'm controlling the loop up here, so you see? So once I'm happy, I can just press an empty cell, and it's now down here, okay? So you can catch that on the fly. Okay, so you can be playing something, say for instance, you just want to take the beat and you want to put it over something else, which is what I did for this. So I just changed the song up, okay? So you can do that. So you can drag and drop, you can capture from decks, okay, which I really think is cool. And you can really mess around with that. What you can also do is if, for instance, I take an a cappella, you can do this over anything. Makes me want to sit right now. You can see my age because I've picked an Annie Lennox a cappella. But again, you can just capture it. I can capture loop record. I can go to deck B, okay, and then I can just press play. Makes me want to sit right down and cry, cry, cry. So I can just take it in there, which means I can now manipulate it how I want, okay? What also you can do is you can add effects to these individually. So you heard, welcome to, it had delay on, and as you can see at the top, I've got delay on there. And I've assigned the deck, the F1 has got the one over there, okay? But I can, have you noticed I haven't got it on any of the others? But so it's just as simple as putting them on. Turn the effects on and off as you will, just like you can on the D2. You can turn the effects on and off however you want, and you can assign anything you want to it. All three, just one, whatever you want. One thing that I forgot to mention, when you do capture, you can actually capture from Q, which is really cool. So for instance, if you don't want to play the song, but you want to capture it, hit the Q button or the monitor, and it will actually sample from the cue, so you can play it live. Does that make sense? So you, instead of playing something live like that, you don't have to do that. You can just press your cue button and then sample from that and then drag it in and capture exactly the same. Okay? Everything else you can still do. You can still loop it. So for instance, so you can still use it exactly the same way as you want. So just remember, when you're capturing, okay, 2 things. One, you need to make sure that you've beat gridded the song first. What you can do is you can capture something and then add it into the beat grid afterwards. Okay, so what I mean by that is if I now go to all my remix decks, say for instance I just go into this one, if I just go into this one, I can now take a clap, okay, if I highlight that, I can take it into a normal deck, and now I can beat grid it myself. That means I can now take this, okay, and have that as my, okay, and I can make sure that's beat gridded before I drag it in, okay? Simple as that. But remember, there's certain things like the Annie Lennox one, you might have to take your snap and quantize off because sometimes it will go over a bar. If it can't read the beat grid properly or you've not beat gridded it properly, you'll take something that doesn't then go back into your remix and it'll be out of time. And trust me, I only did a 5-minute remix deck thing there, but I took so many samples and like Salt and Pepper Push It, and because it manipulates, I just couldn't use it in the end. So I just changed it as and when. So you might need to take your snap and quantize off to be able to take off a half beat or whatever you want to do. You can buy your own. For instance, ones I've got down here from Loop Lounge. You can buy them from other places as well. I personally use the Loop Lounge ones. They've got a lot of tech and tech house and techno stuff as well, but it's entirely up to you. You can buy them from all different places. But you can also make your own on Ableton, the Machine, which I don't use, or anything you want, any DAW that you want, okay? You can also take anything you want and put it into the remix decks. So that is the general overview of what we're doing. I mean, I've pretty much covered everything for the remix decks, and hopefully, because it is really warm in here and I can see people falling asleep, literally. There's only a couple more things that F1s can do, but that is essentially what it does. I wanted to show you that you can use any remix, any genres, any types of songs, a cappellas. You don't need to do anything you want, you can capture. Apart from that, that is pretty much it. You can still scratch on them. You can do everything that you can with a normal track, and only you've got 4. And you can really take anything you want and do live mashups, and I think it's really quite cool.